Chapter 6 of The Jewel of Seven Stars. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Roger Moline. The Jewel of Seven Stars by Bram Stoker. Chapter 6 Suspicions. The first to get full self-command was Miss Trelawny. There was a haughty dignity in her bearing as she said, "Very well, Mrs. Grant, let them go. Pay them up to today and a month's wages. They have hitherto been very good servants, and the occasion of their leaving is not an ordinary one. We must not expect much faithfulness from anyone who is beset with fears. Those who remain are to have in future double wages, and please send these to me presently when I send word." Mrs. Grant bristled with smothered indignation. All the housekeeper in her was outraged by such generous treatment of servants who had combined to give notice. "They don't deserve it, miss, them to go on so, after the way they have been treated here. Never in my life have I seen servants so well treated, or anyone so good to them and gracious to them as you have been. They might be in the household of a king for treatment. And now, just as there is trouble, to go and act like this! It's abominable, that's what it is." Miss Trelawny was very gentle with her, and smothered her ruffled dignity; so that presently she went away with, in her manner, a lesser measure of hostility to the undeserving. In quite a different frame of mind, she returned presently to ask if her mistress would like her to engage a full staff of other servants, or at any rate try to do so. "For you know, ma'am," she went on, "when once a scare has been established in the servants' hall, it's well nigh impossible to get rid of it. Servants may come, but they go away just as quick. There's no holding them. They simply won't stay, or even if they work out their month's notice, they lead you that life that you wish every hour of the day that you hadn't kept them. The women are bad enough, the huzzies, but the men are worse." There was neither anxiety nor indignation in Miss Trelawny's voice or manner as she said: "I think, Mrs. Grant, we had better try to do with those we have. Whilst my dear father is ill we shall not be having any company, so that there will be only 3 now in the house to attend to. If those servants who are willing to stay are not enough, I should only get sufficient to help them to do the work. It will not, I should think, be difficult to get a few maids, perhaps some that you know already. And please bear in mind that those whom you get, and who are suitable and will stay, are henceforth to have the same wages as those who are remaining. Of course, Mrs. Grant, you well enough understand that though I do not group you in any way with the servants, the rule of double salary applies to you too." As she spoke, she extended her long, fine-shaped hand, which the other took, and then, raising it to her lips, kissed it impressively with the freedom of an elder woman to a younger. I could not but admire the generosity of her treatment of her servants. In my mind I endorsed Mrs. Grant's sotto voce remark, as she left the room: "No wonder the house is like a king's house, when the mistress is a princess." A princess! That was it! The idea seemed to satisfy my mind, and to bring back in a wave of light the first moment when she swept across my vision at the ball in Belgrave Square. A queenly figure, tall and slim, bending, swaying, undulating as the lily or the lotus, clad in a flowing gown of some filmy black material shot with gold. For ornament in her hair she wore an old Egyptian jewel, a tiny crystal disc, set between rising plumes carved in lapis lazuli. On her wrist was a broad bangle or bracelet of antique work, in the shape of a pair of spreading wings wrought in gold, with the feathers made of coloured gems. For all her gracious bearing toward me, when our hostess introduced me, I was then afraid of her. It was only when, later, at the picnic on the river, I had come to realize her, sweet and gentle, that my awe changed to something else. For a while we sat, making some notes or memoranda. Then, putting them away, she sent for the faithful servants. I thought that she had better have this interview alone, and so left her. When I came back, there were traces of tears in her eyes. The next phase in which I had a part was even more disturbing, and infinitely more painful. Late in the afternoon, Sergeant Daw came into the study where I was sitting. After closing the door carefully and looking all around the room to make certain that we were alone, he came close to me. "What is it?" I asked him. "I see you wish to speak to me privately?"
"Quite so, sir. May I speak in absolute confidence?"
"Of course you may. In anything that is for the good of Miss Trelawny, and of course Mr. Trelawny, you may be perfectly frank. I take it that we both want to serve them to the best of our powers." He hesitated before replying.
"Of course you know that I have my duty to do, and I think you know me well enough to know that I will do it. I am a policeman, a detective, and it is my duty to find out the facts of any case I am put on, without fear or favor to anyone. I would rather speak to you alone, in confidence if I may, without reference to any duty of anyone to anyone, except mine to Scotland Yard."
Of course, of course," I answered mechanically, my heart sinking, I did not know why. "Be quite frank with me. I assure you of my confidence."
"Thank you, sir."
"I take it that what I say is not to pass beyond you, not to anyone. Not to Miss Trelawny herself, or even to Mr. Trelawny when he becomes well again." "Certainly, if you make it a condition," I said a little more stiffly. The man recognized the change in my voice or manner, and said apologetically: "Excuse me, sir, but I am going outside my duty in speaking to you at all on the subject. I know you, however, of old, and I feel that I can trust you. Not your word, sir, that is all right, but your discretion." I bowed. "Go on," I said. He began at once.
"I have gone over this case, sir, till my brain begins to reel, but I can't find any ordinary solution of it. At the time of each attempt no one has seemingly come into the house, and certainly no one has got out. What does it strike you is the inference?"
"That the somebody, or the something, was in the house already," I answered, smiling in spite of myself.
"That's just what I think,"
he said, with a manifest sigh of relief.
"Very well. Who can be that someone?"
"Someone, or something, was what I said," I answered.
"Let us make it someone, Mr. Ross.
That cat, though he might have scratched or bit, never pulled the old gentleman out of bed and tried to get the bangle with the key off his arm. Such things are all very well in books, where your amateur detectives, who know everything before it's done, can fit them into theories; but in Scotland Yard, where the men aren't all idiots either, we generally find that when a crime is done, or attempted, it's people, not things, that are at the bottom of it." "Then make it people by all means, Sergeant."
"We were speaking of someone, sir."
"Quite right. Someone be it."
"Did it ever strike you, sir, that on each of the 3 separate occasions where outrage was effected, or attempted, there was one person who was the first to be present and to give the alarm?"
"Let me see. Miss Trelawny, I believe, gave the alarm on the first occasion. I was present myself, if fast asleep, on the second, and so was Nurse Kennedy. When I woke, there were several people in the room. You were one of them. I understand that on that occasion also Miss Trelawny was before you. At the last attempt Miss Trelawny fainted. I carried her out and went back. In returning, I was first, and I think you were close behind me." Sergeant Daw thought for a moment before